Welcome to the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we, a business owner and an artist, discuss the business of art and the art of business. Hey friends, I'm Carl, founder of Epic Made.
And I'm Ross, creative director at Epic Made, and we're the hosts of the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we share our thoughts on creativity, art, and business. Past guests include Marcy Selsberg of Blah Blah Blah, Gage Mitchell of Modern Species and Evolve CPG, as well as Adam Martin of Macroverse.
We are forever grateful for the sponsors of our podcast and always are looking for additional sponsors. And as always, this episode is brought to you by the creative gurus at Epic Made. Epic Made is a collaborative of expert artists and animators who help brands tell powerful and engaging stories. We've demonstrated our expertise in visual storytelling, fantasy pop culture, and detailed world building in collaboration with some of the biggest entertainment brands on planet Earth, including Sci-Fi, Nickelodeon, and TNT. Visit getepicmade.com and let's collaborate on your next creative campaign.
You did it, Carl. I'm gonna give you kudos every time. With us today, we have Jim Fielding. He's a respected retail and media industry veteran whose experience spans top global retailers to senior leadership roles at Disney, DreamWorks, 20th Century Fox, Claire's, and The Gap. He's a partner at independent media company Archer Gray and president of its Collab division. He's also the author of All Pride, No Ego, a queer executive's journey to living and leading authentically, which tells his inspirational personal story and provides practical, impactful strategies for real-world leadership. Perfect time for as we conclude Pride Month. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Excited to have you. All right, so before we jump into today's official topic, we've got a couple quick questions for you so our audience can get to know you better. So,
Sure.
How long have you been doing this and what brought you to your industry?
I mean, I've been in, it's sad to say 35 plus years, and I started in a retail training program back in the old department store days, right out of college, at Dayton Hudson Department Store Company in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I haven't looked back.
Awesome. All right, so what's top of mind in your industry right now?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think retail, has been battered, honestly. It's been a rough industry for a number of years. Recession, the drive to e-commerce, the death of physical stores. You've read all the headlines, right? And then the pandemic, right, was like a whole nother uncontrollable event that retail has had to adapt to. And I think a lot of the work that I'm doing in my consulting business, a lot of, what I'm talking to my industry peers about is just what does retail look like post-pandemic and going forward? Like, how do you mix physical and digital? Right. How do you engage with your fans? How do you make actually going to a physical store compelling again? And I think it's an industry that's constantly reinventing itself. It has to. Yeah. As the consumer changes, as the marketplace changes. And so I feel like this is just another reinvention.
And you constantly have to stave off the Jeff Bezos dragon who owns 40% of retail, all of it. Like,
yes.
Oh my God.
And you have to, I really feel for the people who are like in the commodity business, because if you're in a commodity basic business, Amazon has you. I mean, they just have you.
You that store on Amazon or you're not selling anything.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's terrible. All right. And then tell us about a project that you're most proud of.
Yeah, I mean, I think the book coming out, has been a labor of love. I mean, I think that's probably my most exciting upcoming project, with the book being published on August 15th, and what that process has looked like for the last two and a half years of my life, getting it to this point. It wasn't something I ever intended to do. It was something people asked me about a lot, and I always was like, oh, I don't have time. I don't really have anything to say. Would anybody actually read a book that I wrote? And the pandemic again, I mean, I think it gave me an opportunity I had a lot of free time, let's just say. And so I was like, you know what, maybe we should try this. And so I'm super excited about that. And, prior to that, there's so many stories we could go into. We could do all separate podcasts on the Disney store and how we rebirthed the Disney store and what we did with the Trolls movie at DreamWorks. I mean, there's a lot of highlights in my career.
Oh, cool.
Fantastic.
Very cool.
So on this episode of Pixel Retentive, we are going to be kind of diving into a topic that Jim knows intimately, which is leadership, specifically kind of the value of being a lifelong learner and kind of the fruits that it bears as it pertains to leadership, decision-making, control in your own life, and so on and so forth. So why don't you've kind of mentioned, Jim, that you have, off camera, that you have a sort of distinct leadership style. You want to start by explaining that?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really realize it was that distinct, I think, until I actually started, getting into the book. It was just me. And I've been successful and rewarded and respected for it. But when I really started reflecting on things that I do differently, things that I learned from bosses that I worked for, but then also things I do differently, I kind of distilled it down into these 10 leadership lessons that are me. I'm not saying they're uniquely me. I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
But the combination of those 10 is really what, I think makes me into the leader and the person that I am. And you hit on two of them, and Carl actually hit on one of them in the opening questions. And, two of my big learnings, one is be a lifelong learner and stay constantly curious. And the other one is control the controllable, but leave space for the possible. And those two, ironically, are the first two learnings in the book. And I wrote them that way because I do see them going together. And I think there's many leaders out there that I'm sure have voracious appetites for learning and stuff, but it's a drive for me since I was a kid. I'm just a consumer of information. I read, I watch blogs, I listen to podcasts, I read my Apple News feed every day. I subscribe to magazines. I still like physical reading, so magazines, newspapers, I like them in my hand. Although I do digital as well. And I think it's a little bit what you asked with retail, Carl, is like, if you weren't constantly learning, I don't know how you could even be a leader in retail, because what we did 10 years ago is not what we're doing right now in retail. And so I think you have to constantly be growing and evolving as a person and as a leader, as your industry changes, as your company changes, as, the marketplace changes.
And I'd argue that almost every field it has hit that kind of, and I think, Carl, you're probably about to say this, as technology kind of advances, almost every field has hit that kind of parabola where you need to be keeping up with it, or you'll get left behind just because it's moving so fast.
Yeah, for sure. That's what I was thinking too. It's like retail for real got hit really hard early on with web, right? Web 1 came out, and everyone's like, oh, the internet, it's not really that functional, whatever. And then Web 2 started to come out, and like everyone wanted to be on social media and be connected with everybody, and that's that Web 2 phase. And I still remember people be like, oh, people always want to go to a store, and like, it'll be fine. It's like, no, like there's a big, beautiful mall across the street from my house that's like 20% occupied, maybe. Yeah. And then it's like, and I see that, I see a lot of those parallels coming out with Web 3 now. It's like, no one's ever going to use that. And it's like, yeah, they are. Like, but it's
well, you guys are younger than I am, but I remember with Web 1, to your point, Carl, remember we would be in meetings and be like, people are never going to put their credit card number into a computer. Like, we literally sat in meetings and we're like, oh no, it's okay. There's some people that will do that, but people won't trust the interweb to put their address in and their credit card number. Like, we taught those of us in physical retail, particularly, were like, oh no, they won't do that. And then, you just see how it changed. And now, to your point with Web 3 and, AI and like social media commerce, right? Like just buying right off of Instagram, buying right off of TikTok. Like, I don't think any of us were sitting around 5-10 years ago saying, oh, this, maybe some of the futurists were saying it, but many of us in the industry were not predicting this at all.
Yeah.
And to your point, Ross, you would be roadkill if you just sat by. And I think with what you guys do, the way you make content and how technology has affected storytelling and visual storytelling. Again, you'd be roadkill if you didn't adopt these new techniques and stay current and stay competitive.
Yeah. So, and it's just great advice that you have, and I think your book probably is. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. We just met, but
Not out yet,
I
Carl.
really,
Yeah. Nobody's really read it.
No one's read it, Carl. It comes out in like 2 months.
August
Okay,
15th. August 15th.
apologies. Well, good, guys. Good.
But I know on August 16th, you're going to call me and have read it cover to cover, Carl.
Yeah,
I know.
absolutely. That's in my calendar right now. No, but yeah, it's massively valuable to be a relevant leader, to continue to learn and love learning, and just really have that at the core of your how you operate. So
Yeah, it's a DNA. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I spend an enormous amount of time, reviewing video essays, reading books. Like, I actually just got Scott McCloud's whole series on comic books, on like how to make comic books and understanding them and things like that. I also kind of, when it comes to learning like educational content, I think I do prefer physical books. But ironically, I think when it comes to like analyzing media, like I watch a lot of video essays on like the morality and theming of TV shows and movies and things like that, and how to incorporate that into storytelling, and how to write storytelling. I think I find it best to like be talked to about it. There's something between like the technical, reading like a technical approach and hearing like a theoretical approach that I prefer.
Yeah, I think that's
One or the other.
interesting. It's like auditory learning versus, I think technical. I also read because I still use highlighters. Like, I think I'm still back in college, right? Like, I'll be like, oh wait, that's really important. I better remember that.
My OCD won't allow me to
Mark up a book.
Yeah, I get annoyed when I get something shipped from Amazon and it has like a little crease in the corner. I can't even.
All right, I'm gonna pack yours in bubble wrap.
Yeah.
Like yours is gonna be really special.
Pristine.
Yeah.
I have never sat down and read a whole book cover to cover as an adult. I just can't. I don't have the attention span. I can't. I've tried.
I don't think you're alone.
He does
The
audio.
audio. I don't think you're alone. I think there's a generation of people, this almost ADD, ADHD generation of, because we're so used to consuming in 3 minutes now, right? Like, these shorts and, how you consume on Instagram and TikTok and, Facebook kind of started it all. And it's funny. I'm a media executive. You guys are in media. I sometimes struggle watching a 2.5 hour movie now. And it's funny because I'll watch 3 50-minute episodes back to back of a show that I'm binging, which is the same amount of time. But for some reason, because it's episodic, I get through it. But sometimes with a 2.5 hour movie, I'll be like, wow, like I'm really struggling on staying focused.
It's a conclusion thing, right? You need the dopamine response of something ending and you getting some sort of catharsis over the ending, right? And if a movie takes 2.5 hours to conclude, you're waiting too long for that catharsis, because we're so used to digesting social media, where it's a start finish within 30 seconds video. That
interesting point.
Yeah, when we miss out on that, because my wife's that way, where she can't. It's much harder for her to watch a movie than it is for her to watch an entire day's worth of TV, right? And so I think that has a lot to do with it. Social media has damaged our attention span for sure.
It's like overdeveloped that part of the brain that handles that.
Yeah, it's
shortness.
It's interesting. It's like there's a nature and a nurture version of ADD, and I think I probably have both.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So that kind of goes a little bit into the to be consistently learning element of what we were talking about. But how would you what advice do you have for sort of controlling the controllable, but while still leaving room for luck? Give it.
This one I hope I can help your listener. Because this if I had written this book 5 years ago, it would have stopped at control the controllable, because I think for most of my life and my career, I was rewarded and recognized for being, quite honestly, a type A anal retentive control freak who delivered on time, delivered on budget, right? Like I can imagine with you, Ross, like, because of what you guys do, right? On time, on budget. Like I'm gonna exceed your expectations, right? I'm going to over deliver. Like that was me, ambitious, driven, type A, and literally would plan 100% of my life, personal and professional, by the way. Like, and because I was like, that's the only way it's going to work, right? Like I was like, it's only going to work because I'm going to double book things if I don't do this right, or I'm going to forget things like hint, Carl, my anniversary. Like it's like if I don't control my when I'm going on vacation, you guys get what I'm saying. Like that was me, I'd say, into my early 50s. And I think the second after, what I'm embracing now is after the comma, but leave space for the possible, because what I was doing by that was I was missing spontaneity. I was missing happenstance. I was missing those moments of inspiration or innovation or something happening, or a friend calling out of the blue and saying, hey, you want to meet me for a drink? And I'd be like, I'm sorry, I've got 3 things scheduled. Can we get together next Tuesday at 4? And I really wasn't liking the person that I'd become because I was closing myself off from the possible. And I am a creative. I'm in a creative industry. And I wasn't even giving myself time to be creative. I wasn't giving myself any blue sky brainstorming time because I was just so scheduled. And that's my advice to your listeners is, so I follow an 80-20 rule. Don't get me wrong. I'm still 80% planned, right? I am still 80% planned. But my version of the 80-20 rule, which is like the universal rule everybody uses, is I literally put space in my life and in my day for that 20%, where for me, I had to put on my calendar block, right? Or open, or gym time, right? Because if I didn't do it, then I would just schedule meetings over it. Or if somebody went on, all these calendar tools now, right? If they saw an open space on your calendar, they'd take it, right? And so I had to put time in. And it's not, my version of the 80-20 rule isn't, okay, 4 days a week I'm scheduled and 1 day a week I'm free. I put spontaneity and open time in all the time, including on my weekends. Because I think the reality of how we work now with all of these tools and social media and texting and everything, you're kind of on all the time. Like you're accessible, right? I mean, you're accessible. And you're getting constant stimuli. You're getting news feed, you're getting something happening. But it has made me a happier person to embrace that spontaneity and to keep open space. And I think I do some of my best work kind of coming out of those periods. I don't think I'm good back to back to back to back. Like,
yeah, I don't think anyone is. I think there's an inherent fear in not always being on nowadays, right? There's this idea that, and I fall into this trap massively. Like it actually took getting married to the very specific person that I got married to, my wife, that like caused me to embrace, like what you're saying, a little bit more spontaneity, a little bit more adventure. Like I never took vacations at all. Ever. And now that I've been married for a few years, I've taken several, and I like you said, I usually feel better, and I'm usually most of the time on those vacations, I'll just inspiration will hit me, and I'll have to like write down something I never thought of. It's like being in the shower for days, right? Where you're just not, you're not thinking about anything other than just where your mind might go. Yeah, and I think it does allow you to be a lot more creative.
Well, there's no rest to wander, If you don't make the space for your mind to wander, you're not going to be spontaneous. You're not going to have any. That's where real creativity happens, right? Where you have nothing else to fill the time, but just wherever your mind goes, whatever you're inspired by, whatever the muse of the day is, And I think that creative space for all human beings is what gives a lot of happiness to us. So
No, it's up for me. It's almost like tapping back into your inner child, right? And there was a time in our life when we were 6, 7, 8 years old. Like I remember we would come home from school and we would physically change our clothes and put on play clothes, right? And then you would just go out. You didn't really know what you were going to do. Like you might go play kickball or hang with your friends, or I'm older than you guys. We weren't playing games back then. We were playing physical games, not handheld. And then you'd play until your mom's whistle or bell or whatever, meant it was time to come home and eat dinner. And I think what you're talking about, Carl, is like the adult equivalent of that, is you just have to let your mind play a little. And I think it's why I made it the first learning in the book. Is it's probably most recent. People that work for me know the first half of that phrase, because I would say control the controllable, control all the time, like broken record. I think the last 5 years has been the leave space for the possible.
Which is it's advice you hear a lot, right? Like the control the controllable specifically. Yeah. Like it's that is a very parroted kind of advice in the business industry, even in the art industry, in the mental health industry, and it is an industry.
No, for sure.
But the leave space element of it, the after the comma element of it, I think is super important. And going into kind of what you said about going back to your childhood, I don't know when I lost this because I'm an incredibly anal retentive person. It's part of the reason why the podcast is called Pixel Retentive.
Yeah.
And but throughout my childhood, my parents were wonderful, wonderful people, and they would always leave their door unlocked, and my friends would just show up. Like I had a lot of neighborhood friends, and they would literally walk in my house. My parents had one rule, and it was if you're going to walk through the door, you have to say hi to us. That's it.
Oh.
You can. We will always leave the door open. If you want to stay for dinner, you can stay for dinner. You want to stay for lunch, you can stay for lunch. We'll provide for whoever is here at the time, and it was usually several people beyond me and my brother. But the only thing you have to do is say hi to us, and it fostered that spontaneity, that idea that at any point I had to be available for someone to just show up, and I had to kind of stop what I was doing and have fun with the people who wanted to hang out with me. And I don't even remember the last time I seen half of those people because of just how scheduled I've made my life. Like I have to schedule time to spend to watch TV with my wife. There's
I know. I mean, the demands of adulthood, of like an adult life, and whatever the demands of quote success, however you define success, because it's interesting, your company, our company, we're in a service business, right? And I think that fear you talked about, Carl, right, is when you're in a service business, you're like, oh gosh, this client project's finishing up. I better go out and find another one, right? I better, right? And I think that also drives this. Yeah, it also drives this. You're like, oh gosh, okay, I want to keep my team productive. I want to keep my team employed. I want to keep us, moving. This project's finishing. And I think when you're in a service business, you're always looking for what's next, right? And you're always looking for who's that next client, and it fights against spontaneity. That's why it's almost like it's exercise in a way, that you have to force yourself to build it into your day, or the nature of how we work and the nature of the world today, it will take that time. That time will get filled by something else. Nature just abhors that vacuum of time. So nature's going to take it.
And you burnt out.
Unless you force it. You do. And your batteries run down. I was just going to say that. And for me, I will physically get sick. Like I'll get a head cold or like a chest something where my body will be like, okay, you need to lay in bed because you haven't been listening to us and you haven't been doing what you preach. And so we're going to just knock you out. I think that's what I think when I got COVID, I was very late to the COVID game. Like I was proud of myself. I did not get COVID until February of 2023. Right.
Damn.
By the way, my partner's an emergency room doctor and brought it home twice, and I didn't get it. So I was starting to think I was like the Incredible Hulk. I'm somehow these vaccines in my DNA, I am cool. And man, when I got it, even being vaccinated and boosted, it put me down. And where I couldn't do anything except sleep, basically. And
Yeah.
I think my body was telling me something.
You know, I was in yoga, my yoga class on Tuesday, actually, over at the YMCA. And at the end of the class, the teacher says, and remember, make time for your wellness or your body will force you to make time for your illness, right? And that's an old proverb. But yeah, I was like, so true. So true. And that's what we're talking about here is balance, right? You have to have the balance. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's funny. So I have a chronic cough, and it's sort of been attributed to allergies and things like that. I've been to a couple doctors, and they can't decide whether it's asthma or just I'm allergic to everything in the environment. But it's probably a little of both. So, but it's funny. I know the exact night it happened. It started. Like I'm aware of the exact night it happened. And it was on like the third all-nighter that I spent before my graduation for college. Just getting my thesis, trying to get my thesis done. And it's so fun. Like I noticed, I was like, oh, it's weird that I keep coughing. Like, it got seared in my brain that it hadn't happened before, and that I was all of a sudden coughing a ton, and it just never went away. I mean, that was 10 years ago. Like 2013, this happened, and I, for the most part, have not. It's controlled now, as you can probably tell.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think that. Well, there you go. Okay, I was like, give me one. I want to know what it sounds like. Yeah, I'm like, I want to know what I'm looking for, Ross. I'm like, wait a minute.
It's funny.
It's like on the edge of my seat. I'm like.
I think it's almost psychological because as I talk about
total psychosomatic. I'm sorry, I'm not a therapist, but it's psychosomatic. It's a tick. It's stress induced. Yep. I thought you were going to say you were like on a 3-day bender getting ready to graduate. Writing your thesis is better. Like I thought it was going to be like alcohol induced, but
no.
I totally, it's psychosomatic. I get it. Like that was a stress. Exactly. It was a period of intense stress, and probably if you track it, it's other times when you're feeling stress, like deadline stress or financial stress or something. And it's a tick. It's like a physical manifestation of a tick. And I'm super nasally. Like I get congested. Like I mean, my voice is nasally anyway, because I'm from Toledo, Ohio. And I think we talk through our nose, but I get like sinusy, right? Like that's my stress manifestation. Like I'll get almost congested, like a sinus headache almost. Right. I think many people call it like nervous stomach, Ross. You know that. Some people be like, oh, my stomach is upset. Yeah, like, oh yeah, exactly. I think that's your tick.
Yeah. A couple of my friends, like my best friend John, he is sort of alluded to that as well. He's like, I think you just do it. It's now it's just something that you do. Like it may have been a physical thing at some point, but it's just something that happens. I mean, playing devil's advocate.
Now I'm gonna cough for you.
I know. So playing
manifesting it.
I know. Playing devil's advocate though, there is likely someone who takes the leave yourself open for creativity advice too far, right? There's someone who basically says, oh well. They use it as an excuse. They use it as a crutch of like, oh well, I'm taking time for me. It's important, and they don't get anything done. Right?
Yeah.
So what do you think you'd say to those people that like want to reclaim all of this energy to a degree that is maybe unhealthy on the other end?
Well, I mean, I think it's what Carl just said. It's balance, right? I mean, I think it depends on the individual. Like, what role are they in? Like, if this was in my company, for example, right? It depends on, I mean, there are roles within a company, depending on the size of the company, where you can have these individual contributors who are just blue skiers, right? And that's literally their job. But if they're managing a team or working in a team, that's not going to work in the team dynamic. And so, I would do some work counseling with them and say, okay, again, maybe they won't get to 80-20, but like me, but could we kind of get to 50-50, right? Can we plan part of your life because it's going to make you a more productive team member. It's going to make your other members of your team more productive. And again, it depends on what job they're doing. I think if somebody's like a writer or an artist, probably they spend, a lot of time. If they're making money as an artist, they probably spend a lot of their time in the blue sky, right? Because you can't force a painting to come out on can't force the ballot out. But I think it's situational. I think a lot of what I talk about in the book when I talk about authentic leadership, it's really situational leadership, right? Like it's not one size fits all. And I say that so many times in the book when you guys read it.
Okay.
This is my story. These are my guidelines. Take from them what makes sense to you, but you're not going to be able to do it exactly the way I did it. Like it's not a manifesto and do these things in this order and you will be successful. I would never claim to that. And so I hope, anybody who reads it, whether they read the whole book, it's the kind of book that you don't have to read. It's not chronological, so you don't have to read it from the beginning to end. You can go in and pick and choose chapters you want to look at, and maybe that spark your interest. But in answer to your question, Ross, I would sit down with the person and say, okay, we've got to make this work, not only for you, but it's got to work for the team. It's got to work for those people around you, because in most companies, we are interdependent. Like we are working collaboratively, and we have deadlines to meet, and we have budgets to meet, and we have project deliverables to meet, and we do that collectively.
Right. It's funny. We should definitely have some future conversations, because I am a type A digital painter.
Oh,
and so
I would like to watch that.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny that you're like, oh yeah, a lot of artists might spend more time in the blue sky mode, which for anyone who doesn't know is more or less just pure creativity, no wrong answers type methodology. But yeah, I plan maybe 95-5. I'm getting close. I'm trying to work it to 80-20.
Hey, 5%, take it as a victory. I mean,
it's interesting that I can manifest creativity to some degree. Like if I need to draw something or paint something, or there's a lot of the time I can force it analytically. And so I think it'd be interesting to have later conversations about that.
Yeah, I'd love to. Well, the other message of the book, authenticity, that is you being you, right? Yep. And that's the other thing that I'm saying is that I'm not trying to force, square pegs into round holes. Like,
of course,
you knowing yourself and owning your authenticity and owning your story is also, and working, you work with somebody like Carl. Like I say, as a leader, it's our job to create environments where you can work like that, right? If that works for you and you're happiest and most productive doing that, then I need to create an environment that you can do that in, and not say to you, you're doing it wrong. No, you can't do it that way, Ross. You have to do it my way. I would never, ever, ever do that. Yeah, I mean, that's you embracing your authenticity.
I love that. Yeah, and I found, as building this company over the past 16 years is that, creatives, we've always enjoyed a work from home model and working remotely. Like we've been since the beginning. It wasn't even hard for us in COVID, other than no one wanted to spend any money for a little while. But I found that, like, hey, look, we hire a specific type of person, and then they know their objectives, and then I get the hell out of the way. It's like you're really an adult. We're not babysitting. Like, you want to do work at 3 a.m. or 2 a.m, or we don't care. Like, the work has to get done, and we have to leave time for that flexibility. And that's sort of blue sky space for sure. And even myself, like Ross and I are both kind of unicorns in the space, in that we're forced through the business side of things to take the business side of things very serious, right? Be very organized, very disciplined, but we're very much creatives. And I had completely washed that out of my life. Like, I am a blue sky person by a lot. Like, that's where I do a lot of my thinking and all that. I need that to go running and do that. But I got rid of the creativity in my life in terms of art for years. And then I started a live stream on Wednesday night that I do now religiously for a year and a half. And it has elevated my happiness to a whole nother level.
I love that.
and it is pure blue sky creation, right? Like I don't even know what the fuck I'm doing 10 minutes before I start the show. I pick up a notebook of my dad's and I find some old sketches that he did in the 70s. I take a picture of them and I just start drawing on top of it for 3 hours and getting drunk at the same time. And people jump in the stream like, add an eyeball or put some things in outer space. And so it just gets crazier and crazier every week. And I made like 60 of these things. And previously I hadn't done any art since art school. Like I didn't do art for a decade. Ross fired me from the art team, at some point in the growth of this company because I was too blue sky, right? Because
you were like, you were productive. No, he's the one he was asking. Yeah, he was asking about you.
Exactly.
I think that's amazing. I love that story. And I think that absolutely 100% hits it.
Yeah. We built that culture here, I think, which is really cool.
Well, it's so funny. I mean, I have a story about creatives. I know I'm watching our time, but when my last corporate job was 20th Century Fox, and we were still in offices. This was pre-pandemic, right? And our team, I liked our floor. We were in a floor in a tower in Century City, near the Fox lot. It was an office. And our creatives wanted to always be in this one corner of the office, and they'd have all the shades drawn and all the lights turned off. And it always freaked me out because I was like, it was like a dark den that I was like, why? Like the rest, all the other people, like the other functions were super bright, like the windows, the blinds were up, all the lights were on. And then I'd walk to this dark den and I literally would walk in there and be like, are you guys okay? Like, are you depressed? Like, do we need to get you something? And they were like, this is how we work. And it's because they were digital artists for the most part, Ross, right? And they were working on a screen and they needed that darkness to get their, visual acuity and everything. But to me, as an outsider, I was like, oh my God, something's wrong. They're depressed. Like, I need to get them plants, right? I need to get them plants. I need to get them special light. And I literally had to walk in but they were like, this is how we work. Let us work this way. And we literally moved them to the darkest part of the floor. Like we did a floor move and we looked at because it's California, it's sunny a lot in California, right? So we were like, where can we make it the darkest for them? We even got them blackout shades. Like I was like, okay, we can buy them. But it's a perfect example of like, that is how they needed to work. And that's how they felt productive. And I needed to enable that as a leader.
Yeah. It's funny. I always have my shades drawn, and I basically every single keyboard I own has to be backlit so that I can see it while I'm working.
It's so funny. You would have been great with my creative team at Fox because that was them, and they were so happy. And I love what you're saying, Carl. About I think that's what's great now. About I get asked a lot as an executive, as a leader, like, what do I think about this, virtual work versus in-person work and everything else? And my pat answer to it is like, we're just going to be hybrid for the rest of our lives. Like, I don't see us ever going back to 5 days a week in an office mandatory. I don't see us really being 100% virtual either. I think teams will be a mix. And I think it's our job, again, as leaders, when we do bring people physically together, we better make it productive and we better make stuff that you can do when you're physically together. Because if you bring people in and then they all go to their desks and do the same thing they did at home, then they're going to be mad at you for bringing them physically to an office. But I'm the same way. If you work best, particularly like working parents, like I've learned this over the years, sometimes they want to work at 3 o'clock in the morning because they finally got the kids to bed and they got the kids fed and they're all set for school the next day. Now it's their time. They're really productive from midnight to 3. Great. Yeah. Go for it. I'm not asking you to punch a clock. You don't need to tell me what time you're working. It's like, if the deadline is Friday at noon, however you get there, get there.
Yeah, totally. I have a mindset of, we don't have sick time. We don't have vacation time.
Yeah.
Do whatever the hell you need to do and get your work done. And if you need a week,
treat you like an adult, right? Treat you like an adult.
I don't need to own human beings. Like, I don't want anyone to own me. It's why I started my business. And so I made this business for artists, by artists, with the same kind of vibe, like treat everyone like I want to be treated. It's weird how corporate America wants to possess you. It was like, you were 2 minutes late today, Timmy. What you need a like, don't let it happen.
I love that. I love that, Carl. I live by the golden rule: do unto others as you have done unto you, right? And and my mom and dad, that was one of the ways we were raised in my family. And I feel that same way. It's like, I don't want to be told when to be creative. I don't want to be told when to be productive. I don't want to do that to people I work with either.
Yeah.
Honor and respect deadlines, honor and respect budgets, honor and respect timelines, of course.
That's it.
But how you get there, there's 24 hours in the day. I have a niece, my 20-year-old niece is living with me. She's going to kill me. She's living with me for the summer interning. I swear to God, she's a vampire. I called her mother and I said, I swear to God, she's the best from like 10 p.m. until 4 a.m. Like I hear her roaming around the house. Uncle Jimmy is asleep, or trying to sleep. And I'm like, I called my sister. I'm like, I think your daughter is part vampire. Like she's just really good at night. Like not, during the day she works and stuff, but she's just, I think she likes the nighttime.
When I started the company, I used to stay up till 4 a.m. on the regular and sleep till 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And, I was right out of college and that was this is what I was doing. So, whenever worked. So, cool, man. Well, Jim, this has been really fun.
Oh my God. So fun.
We definitely have to have another chat with you. At least stay.
Sure.
I feel like we're friends now. So
no, for sure. I love it.
Okay, so we like to do a last question with everyone, and
Sure.
I think the best one, I think, we talked to you about this a little bit, but who are some of your favorite mentors and best advice, people in the space that you really want to shout out and give some love to?
Yeah, I mean, I have to give total credit. I write about him a lot in the book. Andy Mooney was my boss for 11 of my 12 years at Disney, which is kind of shocking in this day and age to report to the same person. For 11 years. And in hindsight, when I was writing the book and writing about, I've worked for some amazing people, Jeffrey Katzenberg, Bob Iger, amazing people, Stacey Snyder. But Andy probably was the best boss I ever had. And it's a little bit of what you said, Carl, is what Andy was really good about was setting expectations, setting goals, and then letting me go and do what I need to do. And then checking in and making sure I was okay. And then I always knew that if I needed him, I could send an email or a text or call his office and he would be there for me. And when you work in a large media company, you need that. You need to know that your boss has your back. And so, huge shout out to him because I think he enabled my success track record at Disney and was right there with me and was like moving me along and giving me really interesting assignments and really interesting opportunities, including making me president of Disney Store, which was my favorite job I've ever had in my career.
Well, that was fun.
So I think listen, I've had good managers, I've had bad managers, good bosses, bad bosses. He by far stands out as one of the best.
Awesome. Well, huge shout out then for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, Jim. Well, I wanted to go ahead and say thank you to Norbert Betty of Fortier PR. Is that?
Yeah, Fortier. Yeah, Fortier.
There it is. Sometimes I can read
French.
Yeah. It's French.
Yeah. I'm backwoods American. So who referred Jim to us? You can check out their website at fortierpr.com.
That's FORTIERPR.com.
Thank you, Ross.
And we have been talking with Jim Fielding, once again, the author of All Pride, No Ego, and partner at Archer Gray. That's GRAY for anyone who might be European. And if listeners want to follow up with you directly, Jim, like you as a person, as opposed to a company or your book, where would they go?
Well, my website is www.allpridenoego.com. You can follow me on Instagram at allpridenoego, and then on LinkedIn, I'm under James Fielding. You will find me easily.
Great. Thanks so much.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, Jim. Thanks for being on the show. And until next time, everybody, thanks for tuning in.
Bye.
We really hope you enjoyed the show. Please like and subscribe to join us on our next journey through the world of art and business on the Pixel Retentive Podcast.